All right, good evening, friends. Welcome back to Bourbonblog Live. It's our nightly series. I'm here with my good friend from the Spirits Network, also owner of Brandy Library. It's Flavien Desoblin. Nice to have you here with us.
Thank you so much, Tom, for having me. And you said it well. Your French is quite good.
Merci.
Is it all the cognac and the Armagnac and the Calvados drinking that keeps
it could be. I think we may even have some of that around here. We were talking about a few weeks ago, more like a little over a month ago when I saw you in New York and we did the podcast. The very first spirit I ever had when I was a teenager was Armagnac.
You see.
And I know you know a few things about Armagnac.
Well, I mean, it's like so many other spirits, a favorite, but I got something in my heart for Armagnac, and it's not just because of the spirit. It's really the region itself. You know, that whole southwest region of France,
right,
is amazing. Super nice people. They live the life. I mean, you know, they raise ducks, they grow corn, which is something that you can relate to. And they make wine, and sometimes they distill it into that fancy brandy. So right. It's a good life, and they're really good people. You know, true people. A little rustic sometimes, but right. You know, people of the earth. Really, they're farmers more than anything else. So I do love Armagnac. Thank you for having me on the Bourbon.
Oh, no, you're so welcome. You're so welcome, and we love talking French spirits. We're going to talk some whiskey. Now, you had some sort of special honor with the Armagnac folks a few years ago?
That's right. A few years ago, I became a musketeer.
Right.
Armagnac, right? So very proud, very proud. You know, you're entitled to be fierce. And fearless. That's what the D'Artagnan and his friends, soldiers, so to speak, were known for being. Actually, it has something. You know, we'll have some Scotch, you and I, in a few minutes.
Yes.
But the Gascons and the Scots have something in common. Is that for centuries they've been highly regarded as, what? You're not waiting for me? You have already
enjoying it. I'm you talk so much, I'm just gonna have a sip.
Sorry, but see, that's a problem of mine. I talk too much. So is it okay if I start with this?
No, you go ahead. I was enjoying what you were talking about. So Flavien has such a immense background and history, and we've got to know Flavien and the team there at Spirits Network, but we've always known our friends at you all at the Brandy Library. We'll talk about all those things in a moment, but let's go ahead and have a drink. I was just enjoying a little sip. What do you have there in front of you?
So I've got Harper 15.
Harper 15. And I have some of the Blade and Bow with, it does have some bourbons that are upwards near the 15-year-old mark, and some. I think the youngest one in this is 7-ish, 6 or 7, goes up to 15 plus. So I do love that. Harper.
I like both of those brands. I mean, and honestly, they're very approachable in both on the flavor profile, and I do not mean that they're weak or too easy. On the contrary, they've got nothing aggressive, and this is something I really appreciate, because you can always be very confident in having your friends, the ones that you introduce to bourbon, liking those. And that helps, because then you can build their palate. So
right.
Works for me.
Good to see you.
Cheers.
Yes. Now, I know on that Harper, there's just some really beautiful, the age on that just shows so nicely, doesn't it?
And here's the thing. It's 15 years of age. So for bourbon, it's considered being quite old, right?
Yeah.
And yet, to me, it's round and fruity.
Yeah.
So clearly, they do a great job at maturation, mostly, I think, here, because you don't have any of the harsh notes that you can get from overaged bourbons.
Right.
And above 8 to 10 years of age.
Fraction, right?
Right.
Right.
There is a hint of smoke on this, but it's really also pleasant, super fruity. And look, you and I always try to see through everything else, the noise around the spirit, right? The bottle itself, the marketing messaging that we're blasted with, maybe the ad campaigns here and there. We just want to look at the juice, okay? But in this case, I mean, I so love the bottle too. That decanter, I think it's just it makes me feel like I'm JR in Dallas, you know.
It's JR.
By the way, it's a French thing, you know. The French, if they could have elected this amazing actor, regretted
right,
actor for president, they would have. I mean, it was the number one personality for the longest time in France.
Right, that's what I've heard. Yeah, French loved. Why do you think the French loved Dallas so much and JR?
Well, first of all, you know that there is that general admiration for the United States,
right?
And then Dallas, maybe it came at the right time. Meaning back then, all those episodes were released, I don't want to say maybe a year or two later, right? Right now, it's just probably still a week or two. But everybody watched it, and you know that sense of power, those expansive landscapes.
Yes.
And of course, you know, between the ranching and the oil that Texas represent, this was absolutely fascinating because when I was a kid, we were just a few years after that big crisis, you know. I mean, 1973. I was born a couple of years later, right. So really, I was like, I think I was maybe 10-year-old, 12-year-old when Dallas was super popular. It was number one show over in France.
Oh yeah.
And then we had Dynasty and
Falcon Crest and all that. I used to watch those too with my parents. Those, and then they reintroduced Dallas a few years ago.
Right, but you know.
Yeah. Now there was. Did you ever see the J.R. Ewing bourbon? There was that. I don't know if that's still out. It was out for a couple of years.
I mean, I remember. So we did order some.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, 3-4 years ago now.
Right.
And I thought it was quite decent.
It was supposed to be designed from the bottle that JR had behind his desk, I think. But I agree with with regard to the bottle that you have there. I think it really does look like something that you would just go back in time and feel like you're in the 70s or 60s or something like that with a really nice decanter. It's really good.
And in spite of what we want to do, we are always influenced by the looks.
We are, yeah. And it's hard unless as I know you have done a lot of spirit judging. I've done some spirit judging or if you could have someone, a friend, a family member, pour something blindly just to kind of test you to see what you like at home. That's always nice to do, but that's for most of us, that's so rare, isn't it?
Yeah, because I mean, look, the act of purchasing itself is essentially due to what you've heard about the brand, what you're conditioned to like or dislike by what colleagues have said, friends have said, an ad that you saw in the Wall Street Journal, whatever. And then you're right there in front of the bottle, depending on how it is positioned, depending on the lighting in the store, and depending on how it just looks, that's it. You're buying or you're not buying. And if there's a better looking bottle next to it, you have to fight with yourself to not buy the better looking bottle.
Right. And the story, like you said, the marketing, the story, what is the story that tells? And just looking at that bottle, that Harper that you have, it already tells the story of something old from another time.
Right, exactly. And you know, I think it's really well made because right here is clearly a gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
And that gentleman plus 15 plus this decanter, I mean, you feel big already. If you need to
like part of that, thing, right? A little bit.
Yeah, Yeah, and actually, there is that cool story behind the brand. Really, Hopper. Um, it was from the Bernheim brothers, if I remember correctly.
Right.
Those German Jewish immigrants in the 1850s, something like that.
It dates back a ways. I remember that. Yes.
Right, and who didn't think it was that cool when starting their distillery to call their bourbon by their last name for a brand, and rather they took their horse trainer's name, Harper, and it did sound good, and here we go.
The name can weigh in. The story, also true. And again, for those of you who are just joining us, we're so excited you're here. We're speaking with Flavien Desoblin from Spirits Network, also the owner of the Brandy Library. This guy knows so much about spirits. Ask your questions down below on Facebook, on YouTube. And if you're watching on Twitter, tweet back to us. Definitely like this, share this. We're glad to have so many people having a sip with us tonight. Now, I think a lot of people watching, Flavien, like myself, probably already subscribed to Spirits Network or they're fans of Spirits Network. Tell us, just so that we know, a little bit about the history of Spirits Network and what it's about.
Well, I mean, it's quite simple. Look, Spirits Network, for those who are not familiar, is a sort of a Netflix for spirits,
right?
But with the added ability to shop. So it pairs the streaming entertainment with the liquor delivery. So you can be right there in your couch, and you're watching some really cool content that we've got on the platform. It's on your big screen, or it's on your mobile phone. You download the app. If you have a smart TV, it's the best because the big screen really does it.
Beautiful content.
You can watch a lot of content, and then you can also decide that you want to purchase this bottle or that other bottle, and you get it delivered within 2 hours in all big cities. So we're in about 50 cities across the US. And I mean, it's a bit of a revolution because you take, say, Food Network and Birchbox, the mix of a Netflix feel, and this is it. This is what Spirits Network is. So it's a membership, right? You need to join. Right now, if you use WWVIP, you can become a member, an Explorer member, for free. So you can watch all the content you want. Excellent. You can purchase all those balls that you want, and then if you're interested, that's the other really cool part to Spirits Network. You can let us curate your experience every month. If you become an enthusiast or a connoisseur for $100 or $150 a month, we pick bottles for you that you receive every month at home, and it's all based on your flavor profile. So we know you. Well, actually, if it was you, it'd be a bit of a problem because you like it all. But you can decide to like it all, and you receive a bit of everything, right? But say if you're a bourbon fan, you receive that bottle or those 2 bottles of bourbon every month. Nice. So it's a curated experience, and there's a lot of the content that you will find on the platform that we made ourselves, right? Because we're a production house to begin with, right. And other contents that we have acquired. So it could be a super nice piece on Scotch whiskey that we got from UK, and it could also be great cocktail tutorials that we acquired from, the Bonneville, for example, right? And naturally, but I almost want to say thanks to this quarantine, we've added some live shows, and just like you're doing with Bourbonblog Live, which I think is really cool. You've got some really good content. It's quite varied, which I think is the really cool part about what you're doing. So we've got the Home Bar Hero with Rob Floyd
Yes.
every Friday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And every Wednesday, I'm the star of the show of Whiskey Wednesday.
Yes.
Right? So at 6 p.m. also Eastern Standard Time. And we go through several single malt Scotch whiskeys. And I'm trying to give a little bit of how it's made and why it tastes like this, and just snippets of history here and there, and to get people interested, excited, just to bring a bit of a spicy entertainment to people's life. Because I mean, let's be honest, there are only so many shows actually on Netflix and Hulu that you can watch, and we have our addictions to certain shows, right? But it's good. It's good to see what's behind those whiskey brands and those brandy brands, right?
Absolutely, and it's a lot of learning. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, just and so well said. After a while, and it's been well over a month, a lot of us have finished the shows we were hoping to finish.
I know.
Netflix. So this is something where you can, if for those watching, most of you are spirit fans, whiskey fans, you can learn, you can interact, you can buy the spirits right there. And Rob Floyd, also a good friend of mine there. I see him when I'm in LA quite often. Does such a great job with that show. And I've really been enjoying your Whiskey Wednesdays are really something else.
I mean, look, the thing is, when it's live, you got to be careful. And being French, I got to be double careful here, because what comes out of a French mouth is not always so proper. Even if it comes live from New York City, you still have to be careful. So I've got to keep myself in check. What are you ready for next, Tom?
Why don't we go to the why don't we do the Whistle Pig? You'll tell the story behind Whistle Pig.
Right.
For those watching there, tell me the code once again for if they did log on to
spiritsnetwork.com, you would use the code WWVIP. Now, of course,
is that capitalized or is that just
it's capitalized? Yes. There is an age gating, and you do need to put your credit card number, but it's going to be free, so don't worry about it. We do need, yes, that's perfect.
WWVIP is the code,
and you use that code, and it will be free for a year, right? And we're doing this for our you Bourbonblog lovers. And honestly, to be helping people right now, not having to spend extra money, because it's got to be lean.
That's right. Well, we appreciate that. Definitely log on there. Thank you for doing that for us. It's great content. I enjoy it, and we're going to try some Whistle Pig. Now, I have the 10-year-old Whistle Pig, and
right?
You have a special barrel there that you all picked out,
right? Because we so having a quite long-term relationship with Whistle Pig, I guess. It was launched, and I can't remember exactly when. Was it almost 10 years ago now? Was it
not 10? Yeah, they're almost
something like this. At Brandy Library.
Yes.
With the original founder.
Yes.
And in New York, at least, it was launched at Brandy Library. So we always thought it was something really interesting. And when we started to do single barrels for our Spirits Network members, we thought, well, Whistle Pig has a cool story. They're really dynamic, and they've got great flavor profiles. So we tasted through a bunch, and we settled on that 10-year-old that was aged for 7 plus 3 years. So it's a brand new American oak, and it's ex-bourbon barrels, right? But this is now, it does come at the sweet 109.9 proof.
109, so a little higher than the original release, being 10 years old, 100 proof.
Yeah,
100% rye. This is a little higher what you're drinking. What? So that you picked that one out several years ago, then, that particular bottle, or did you?
No, we did this. I want to say 6. All right, let's go for 8 months ago.
Okay, so it's pretty recent, 8 months ago.
Yeah.
Always loved them.
It's rich.
Peg 10. What do you get on your barrel that makes it something special in the single barrel?
So I get more pepper than on the regular issue 10-year-old. More pepper. To me, it's still very fresh and vibrant, zesty, minty and citrusy and all that. But there is that spicy, that pepper element there that I really enjoy. And I mean, honestly, at 109.9 proof, it drinks so easily. So it's also, I always like Whistle Pig because it's also very versatile.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have absolutely no problem using this in a cocktail. It can stand up to most other ingredients that you put in there.
Yes, their whiskeys, I agree, Flavien, are so wonderful for cocktails. Coincidentally, right after I saw you in New York, my wife and I, we actually went to the Whistle Pig farm there in Vermont.
Nice.
Spent some time with the distiller. I think we were their last guests for a while because that was just as things were closing down.
Right.
We got to try several of the experiments they're working on, and I love what they've done with the farm stock. We've always been big fans of the 12-year-old. And what did you think of the Umeshu barrel? This the last.
So the samurai.
Samurai scientist. Yeah.
Yes. First of all, I gotta say that if you can put your hand on such barrels,
yes,
you're already. I mean, you're just a superhero.
Yes.
Because it means that not only you are very curious, but you've also done your homework, and you know it's gonna work, or you just try. So it's a bold move. They knew, of course, from the whiskey producers that it could do something real nice. But to be honest, I don't think anybody had done it on rye whiskey.
Right.
So I thought it was really cool.
It's something brand new. I mean, they've been so innovative with what they've done, and becoming the first triple terroir distillery in the world in modern day. Something so powerful. You were talking about cocktails. Now we've actually been enjoying. My wife and I have the last few weeks during the quarantine doing. And I'm sure you're familiar with the cocktail, the Revolver. Are you familiar with that one?
Right.
With the coffee liqueur. We've been using Whistle Pig, a little coffee liqueur, and a little flamed orange. I mean, those have become one of my favorites on the quarantine drinking tour that we've been doing.
So wait a second. Who's making the cocktails at home? Is it your wife or is it you?
Well, I do occasionally, but Annabelle, my wife, she's really gotten into it. She really enjoys it, and she's been making them for us both. So, all
right, very good.
She's very talented. Though I think we're both learning. I think we're both getting a little better. Do you have a favorite rye whiskey cocktail yourself?
I got to tell you, many years ago, as a matter of fact, when we opened Brandy Library, so over 15 years ago, we decided to go for Rittenhouse Rye as our house rye whiskey for cocktails, right? That was our well. And I am quite happy and proud to say that over 15 years later, it still is. And we're using a rye whiskey in our old fashioned. And it's just a brilliantly simple, beautiful old fashioned.
Wow.
So it's a combination of Rittenhouse Rye and the cherries. We go and buy cherries. So I don't know how we're going to do it this year, but we buy like 150 pounds of fresh cherries in Chinatown when it's in season. And we marinate them in a mix of bourbon and orange liqueur, mostly. And I'm not going to give you any more secrets.
No, this is it. This is the only secrets.
And this is that cherry that we use in our old fashioned. So what does it? The Rittenhouse or the cherry, the combination, I guess it is. But that's really my very one favorite.
That's incredible. That just that touch of that marinating cherry too.
Yeah. I mean, it does. It goes a long way. And look, I'm a pretty conservative guy when it comes to cocktails. Truthfully, I do tend to see a cocktail in every need pool I have.
If you see something you like, you think about what could this be a good cocktail with, right?
Right.
Right.
And then there could be such a rich character to the spirit itself that, to me, that's enough, because if I've got if I smell lemon zest, and if it's and if on the ritual nasal I'm getting some dark chocolate, and if I get a silky texture, and if there are notes of marzipan and Bing cherry and all of this, I'm like, well, why do I need to make a cocktail with it?
Because it's already good just as it is.
Yeah.
But it is true. The more that we have a spirit like Whistle Pig, something that has an incredible foundation, when you use, and some people will say, don't use too good of a whiskey in a cocktail, but when you use a good whiskey in a cocktail, it makes it that much better. Now, at what point, as far as for you, as far as price point, rarity of whiskey, would you not make a cocktail with it? Do you have any thoughts on that?
It's a bit like saying I'm not gonna wear this $120 shirt,
Right.
just because I'm not gonna meet anyone important today. If it's gonna make you feel good, and if your first inclination is to grab that shirt, then just go for it, because there's nothing that should really stop you from doing so.
Right.
I'm the first one to put great spirits on the pedestal.
Yes.
And there is so much history behind each brand, and there are so many people working so hard to make it just as good as it is when they bottle it.
Right.
I feel like, why would you want to tamper with it? But then, hey, we've got many different moods. There are 24 hours in a day, and even though you've got to keep some for sleeping, and you should not be drinking while sleeping.
Right.
It leaves, say, 16 hours to your day, and provided you're not starting too early, you leave 8 hours for work. It leaves you with 8 hours of playtime. So within these 8 hours, you're gonna go through a lot of different moods and desires and all that. So I think it would be way too limiting. I certainly, I may come across as a purist, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with using a very good whiskey in a cocktail, because you just feel like doing it. So there is that mechanism in your brain that will trigger happiness. Go for happiness.
I agree, and I think more people have come to that realization, to that point of view. It seems like a while back, when I first got into this, doing Bourbonblog 15 years ago or so, people were, especially in Kentucky, or if it was something kind of rare, or older bourbon, they would say, don't do that. We haven't done that. But I think the more that the cocktail culture, the whiskey culture has opened up, people have become more experimental. And even some bars we've seen, if they have a historic, one historic whiskey, a historic vermouth, very, very rare ingredients. We're even seeing these spins on a cocktail where you'll take a whiskey from the 60s and a vermouth from the 70s, and they layer it and they put it into that kind of cocktail too, which is incredible, I think.
Yep. I'm with you. What have you seen in say your last now 4-5 weeks of quarantined Bourbonblog? Have you seen trends already? Have you you're getting different feedback from people, have they changed their drinking habits? What's up?
Good question. I think with changing the habits, I think it's obviously having a home bar is always been celebrated, but now having a home bar really is the only way we can celebrate. So with that in mind, I think the experimentation, just like we're doing here at our house, has become something that's grown. I think that there has been some tendencies for, depending on who we're talking about, some crowds may shift more towards some of those staple brands that they've always known. But I think that they've learned more about the craft brands, Flavien, from the craft brands have really made a push, just like we are, to go live, to tell their stories from the distillery, to really open up people's thoughts and minds to new ways of drinking and new ways of doing things.
Right.
And of course, the to-go cocktails. In many states, that's legal. So we've seen cocktails to go. But I would hope that as the push to support local restaurants that are doing to-go food and to-go cocktails is present, I would hope that consumers who love something new and who care about supporting local will also, try craft spirits. And I think they are to a degree. What about what have you seen?
Well, it's first of all, we at Spirits Network we could identify already a while back that the action was moving from out there to inside your home, your apartment.
It already was.
Yes, and so I think the trend was already started, and it's really just cementing this current trend. And it's a good thing. And I want to say, I mean, look, I own 2 bars. Brandy Library was first. Copper and Oak is the second that we opened about 5 years ago in the Lower East Side in New York City. And clearly we've been closed, right?
Right.
For now, is it a month and a half already? I guess we're getting close to that, and it's terrifying because my staff is out of work, and all of them are absolutely amazing people,
right?
And they've acquired so much knowledge over the years. They're real hospitality specialists.
Yes.
And all of this talent right now is just not being used. And that's extremely frustrating for them, for me, for our customers. So I really want people to just go back out there when we can reopen and show their love. So restaurants and bars do need it. On the other hand, I think there's something really healthy. And because you were mentioning the craft guys,
yep.
Why don't we just jump to one of the original New York craft guys?
We'll go for it, and we are big fans, and we're big fans of so many.
I think
New York, in Kings County bourbon.
They turned 10, right?
They just turned 10 last week. They turned 10 years old,
and now it's also available in a 750 ml.
Let's show that sideways, if you would. See how thick that is. It's amazing. I do love the 375s, but the 750 is so beautiful. Thank you. Now, remind me, how many years ago was it that you started? Because I know I came in the very early days of Brandy Library, but how many years ago was it that you started Brandy Library?
So it was in October of 2004.
Before, yes. Yeah, I knew it was.
It's going to be, if we ever reopen before fall, it will be 16 years.
16 years old. Wow.
Yeah, that does. And I got to say, I had no gray hair whatsoever back then. Look at this one. And where's your gray hair? That's crazy. Gray hair.
It's in my beard. It's right here.
Right.
Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.
Well done on 16 years. That's great. You've done a great job with it.
And you're right there at 15. We're both at 15.
Yeah, we're right around there. Yeah, we are. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've always really enjoyed the expression of, well, you get the terroir. I mean, the terroir comes through in the New York grains. I mean, I say this about a number of New York distilleries because there is something specific about the grains, the water that gives that element for the New York region. But there's this wonderful corn, like sweetness against smoke, the barrel expression on this, the fact that it's a little less than 4 years old. To me, it tastes a lot bolder and bigger than that.
Right.
I love it.
And speaking of 4-year-old, my new favorite from them is the bottle and bond. I think they've done a good job at that bottle and bond.
Yes.
And you're talking about terroir. In New York, we've got that very cool thing. New York is New York, right? I mean,
right.
It's right there. It's it's ahead of the pack. Not when it comes to bourbon, not when it comes to rye, or maybe because now there's that new category, so to speak, that's the Empire Rye.
Empire Rye, yes.
And I think this is a very cool initiative from first a handful of distilleries,
Right.
Sourcing the rye 100% from New York State.
Yes.
It helps the farmers and going back to heirloom varieties of rye, which
Right.
I think is something that the craft distillers are right.
Yep.
Are bringing to the forefront of the distilling scene in the United States of America, and that's beautiful because you mentioned terroir, but it is also important that we tie back what we drink and what we eat to the land it came from.
Yes.
And this is what's interesting about this time in quarantine right now for me is that, being French, we do a lot of cooking. It's just more natural to certain people, to certain societies, to certain countries to cook at home than others, right? And so I can see in America a huge and long-lasting shift towards preparing meals at home instead of either going out or getting that takeout, that delivery. So now, while this is bad for the restaurant business,
right,
there is something good to be said there when there is that moment in between family members of cooking, and it is proven that when you do cook at home, you do eat less and you eat more variety of food.
More variety.
And so I think it's really important. And right now, people are getting back to their recipe books, their cookbooks, and they say, "Oh, what if I cook this tonight?" And then this forward thinking of what are we going to have tomorrow for dinner. So not only is it good for the brain because you get working and which ingredients am I going to need, and then you realize that wow, so that means out of the last 5 meals, there was only one that was awesome. It means that those guys in kitchens, in restaurants,
right,
they're actually doing an amazing job every day because
really
they're super good every day, right?
Yep.
People get to not only spend more time in the kitchen discovering the ingredients themselves, paying attention to them, learning about the ingredients and the methods of cooking, but also it's good because they realize how much there is of know-how, experience, and all of that, and knowledge altogether inside all of these kitchens. So I think it's going to be a long-term pattern of home cooking, and it will also help spirits because people will just put more attention, generally speaking, to what they put in their system.
I agree. I mean, I think that we're going to, when we already are gaining more appreciation for those behind the bar, for those chefs, because we see what really goes into this day in, day out if we're not doing the pickup thing, which so many of us statistics are showing are cooking at home. Now, when you look at, those are really great observations, Flavien, when you look at what impact this will have on how many people support restaurants, I'm sure once this quarantine is lifted, once we all feel comfortable, one of the first things we're going to want to do is go out into a bar, have a cocktail, have a drink, have a whiskey, have a nice meal. How do you think it will impact restaurants, bars, just this, say it's 6-7 weeks, whatever it ends up being, 2 months, how will it impact the way we support restaurants and bars going forward?
Well, first of all, in every household, there is a wife and a husband, or a roommate and another roommate, a boyfriend and a girlfriend, and they will have spent so much time together that when we can go back out, it's going to be Oh, honey, let's just go there. Oh, yeah, but I was thinking of meeting my friends at this other place, but you love this other place. Why don't you just come with us? And then, so we're going to see a major split. And I have the feeling that there will be stories told. And the one mistake that couples cannot make is to just go out together.
Right.
In the first few days, it's going to have to be, each to his own.
Right.
And what we will really need is meeting the friends. And with all of those stories, oh, you have no idea, my wife was driving me nuts. And then she'll say, God, I love my husband to death. But, so these stories will need to be told. Okay. Now, this will last, say, a couple of weeks. And then everything will go back to normal, I believe. What I believe will happen is that maybe 2-3 months down the road, we will actually see that current trend going back full force, with, again, paying attention to household spending, which means that there will be a lot more home cooking and a lot more cocktail making at home, because that practice will have been very strongly anchored in your everyday life. So there will be some adjustment. And look, let's be frank, not every bar will reopen, not every restaurant will reopen. Those who were sort of struggling before,
Right.
with zero cash flow and maybe not so great relationship with their landlords or with their suppliers and all that, unfortunately will have to reinvent themselves and maybe just go and venture out in another realm, another business. But that's the reality. If we ever get some help from the government in the shape of that disaster loan, that SBA or the PPP program,
Right.
then there's a light at the end of the tunnel. But if that's not happening,
It's hard to know. It'll really be something we'll have to watch. And I do think that there's a lot of awareness that's come out of this for those in the business, the professionals, the chefs, everyone, the servers, everyone in the whole game, that we've gained more and more appreciation for. Hey, we have one of your viewers of your Whiskey Wednesdays has a question. Karen's asking, you had this little aside Wednesday telling us about using a little whiskey in mushrooms.
oh yeah.
Any suggestions like that for bourbon that you might have?
So, I mean, bourbon is the cook's best friend. Honestly, I feel like there's no easier spirit than bourbon to bring happiness to the house. So let's not forget that bourbon is bold and rich and sweet.
Right.
Bourbon, before any other whiskey, will work perfectly with any cream sauce, anything. And let's stay on the savory side for a second. Anything that involves mushrooms and smoked meats.
Yeah.
So you've got different techniques. I talked about one of them, I believe, on this past Whiskey Wednesday. Mm-hmm. It's always very dangerous to use any type of alcohol in your cooking, no matter what. You've got to be careful, because and especially for bourbon, you may be tempted to use some cask strength bourbon, right, or whiskey. You can have trouble extinguishing the flames if you're flambeing something, right? But if you use bourbon for flambe, it is because you've already seared the meat, right? So remember that if you don't want to get any sort of burning You use a little bit of butter along with a little bit of olive oil. It's very important. And it's the best mix, really. You sear your piece of meat, and you throw a little bit of bourbon there. Now, of course, you can let it burn. You can let it all evaporate, all up in flames and all that. And it's a great show. And, everybody will be impressed about your cooking technique. But you're not going to be left with much of that bourbon taste. So just blow on it before the flames run out. And then maybe you can further deglaze with a little bit of sherry. Or not. If you're using sherry when using bourbon prior to this, you want to use maybe a sweet sherry, such as a Pedro Jimenez or a Moscatel, right? And then, you can do whatever you want with the meat. But if you're using mushrooms, you want those mushrooms to be part of it right there from the beginning. However, you want to make sure that your mushrooms will not burn with those flames, right? A very simple recipe is, say, a filet mignon that you use a little bit of bourbon on the flambéing with, right? And you've got some cracked maybe green peppercorn that you put all around your filet mignon first, and you've seared this. You use your bourbon, and then maybe you take away the piece of meat and you put it in the oven, right? Depending on how thick it is, anywhere between, say, 6 to 14 minutes, right? Then you get that filet mignon out of the oven, back in the pan, or not. But what's important is before serving, you put some heavy cream in that pan, right? And you let it come to a boil. You let it thicken a bit, and right when you're ready to serve, you add, say, half an ounce of bourbon in there. To me, it works really well.
Right.
Yes, right before serving.
Wow.
Another technique is to marinate your steak, your meat with bourbon, but you've got to be careful. More than half hour, and it could be too strong, especially on a meat that is as delicate as a filet mignon. If it's say a porterhouse, it's somewhat less important because it's got stronger, bolder flavors, right? So be careful with the marination there. Sherry is a friend in your cooking when you use it in light touches, right? But it adds depth to your cooking.
Right.
It's very important. It's like if you didn't put stock in that stew, that stew,
that's going to give it some more depth on that sherry. It's going to give it one more layer.
Yeah. Sorry, I went a little too long.
No, it's incredibly interesting. I think one of the most interesting parts of that is the proof of the spirit. I mean, whether you're with whatever kind of whiskey it is, with that stronger proof, you get more of that flavor that comes through. My mom, actually, she's Kentuckian. She makes bourbon balls every year for Christmas, and I always tell her, and she always does, put a barrel-proof bourbon in those, and it always makes that much more difference because I want to taste the booze on those bourbon balls. Someone also saying they love bourbon in steak au poivre sauce. So a lot of fans.
And remember, the best accompaniment for this is you can go for French fries, of course. That's the easy way. But roasted potatoes works beautifully too, right? Or just regular pasta with a little bit of butter. Whew, really good. What are we having now? Because I'm getting thirsty.
A little bullet.
Oh yes,
the bullet near you. I've been known just to take a little bourbon, like a bullet or like one of these, and if I have a creamy soup, I just pour a little whiskey in it, just for fun. I like whiskey flavor in things sometimes.
And taste.
And taste. Oh yeah. I even put it. I tell you what. I'll have to send you a video a long time ago when I did the documentary on bourbon, Flavien. I did a recipe where I put bourbon in my oatmeal. I put bourbon, chocolate, and cinnamon in my morning oatmeal, and it was pretty splendid. Pretty nice.
But you were already 21 years of age, right?
I was already 20. So we're gonna do this. The original Bulleit, the Frontier bourbon, always a good go-to. Of course, we enjoy the rye, the 10-year-old, the barrel proof, but there's nothing quite like this. And the other great thing about Bulleit is, when I'm traveling, I'm sure you as well, whether it's in France or in Britain, it's something that you do find quite often. It's a bourbon that I'm seeing more and more across the globe, right?
I mean, it's so popular.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible. And funny enough, I really enjoyed that bulletproof. What am I saying? That cask strength of Bulleit.
It's kind of like bulletproof, though. It feels like it. Yeah.
To me, it was really big and rich, the way I want my cask strength to be.
Right.
And I don't know why there was not any more traction on this, because I thought it was really worth it.
Right. I think that it's something. Hopefully, if you can find it, it's good stuff. I like trying anything at barrel proof, but this is great at 90. This obviously is beautiful by itself. Always a lot of good. I've always got a little bit of maybe that cherry pipe tobacco note from Bulleit. I mean, it has some of that nice tobacco earthy note, but it has that sweetness too. Do you have a favorite? Obviously great by itself, but is there anything that you like to make Bulleit into a particular cocktail yourself?
For me, Bulleit is the Manhattan.
I agree. It's great in the Manhattan
because it's got some complexity, but it remains easygoing. It's straightforward. I don't want to call it simple. On the contrary, because it has enough depth, right, of flavor.
Right.
To me, it works beautifully in a Manhattan.
Right. And if you've been lucky enough to see them on the road, where they have the, do you know what the name of that vehicle is? It called the? It's the external. It's like a kind of a camper thing they take with them, and they make cocktails from. Is it called the Bulleit Woody or something like that? You know what I'm talking about? They take it to a lot of festivals and such. It's a really good time. They make great cocktails right there. I think it's called the Bulleit Woody, if I'm not sure. But
I don't remember.
Yeah, it's a good time.
We had quite a bit of fun at Spirits Network with Bourbon Botter. Bourbon Botter was Adam Carolla.
Okay.
You can watch this on Spirits Network.
Yeah.
Adam Carolla just bottering his way through Kentucky with Bulleit bourbon. It was quite cool.
He's bartering. He's just
yeah. So he got well, I can't reveal everything because you should be discovering this yourself, but he got a ride in a very fancy car. He got to ride a very unusual bike, and more. So it was quite cool.
Excellent. That's cool. Well, and definitely the Bulleit experience there in Kentucky, the new experience they've opened not too long ago. I think about a little less than a year ago they opened the newer one.
So I have not experienced that. But
the Weller one's great, and then they have one just that's aimed towards Bulleit. That's not too far from Louisville. I'm forgetting the name of the town, but it's close to Louisville too. So there's a experience.
Shelbyville or because I remember taking the team. I want to say now it's got to be 5 years ago to the Bulleit experience, and I think it was the very best tour I have ever had. Now, of course, it was the tour guide, right? That was amazing. She was a fairly young lady who just knew everything, and she could tell us absolutely everything. She had an answer to absolutely every single question we had. And I've traveled the world I have an itch for traveling, so it's quite difficult for me right now.
Right.
But from Japan to Austria to Scotland to of course to Kentucky and Ireland and Greece and so many of those. I go visit countries where I can visit distilleries and learn stuff, right, when it comes to fine spirits, and sometimes less not so fine spirits. um, I visited hundreds of distilleries. That bullet visit was the very best of them all. So and of
Excellent.
course I forgot the name of the lady. I feel terrible, but it was really just perfect.
So the bullet experience, I looked it up because I wanted to remember where in Kentucky. It's Shelbyville's the bullet one, and then the Stitzel-Weller one's in Shively.
Right. So
I had to look both up.
So it was now that I think I remember, it was in Shively because
Right.
it was the old Stitzel-Weller compound.
And they have part of it's a bullet experience too.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
The one that they just geared towards just bullet is in Shelbyville, which is not too far from Shively, and it's splendid as well. It's just really it's a remarkable experience and geared just to bullet, where they're aging a lot of bullet. And for those of you that love bullet, be assured they're making much more. They've really had to predict all these distilleries. I mean, from when you opened the Brandy library and bourbon was beginning to get a little bit more hot, these distilleries have really had to predict a lot further, haven't they?
Yeah, and back in the days, they were being Kentuckians.
Right.
So in the first few years, honestly, they were a bit in a wait and see attitude. And so opening late 2004, I want to say a year in, or late 2005 or early 2006, we built a new wall, an entire wall, to accommodate 3 new bookcases to dedicate those bookcases just to bourbon.
Right.
Bourbon and American whiskey in general, but of course it was mostly bourbon. And people were really surprised because bourbon was not big yet. Bourbon was still that lip-smacking drink that old-timers were putting down like cowboys, right? But we could tell there was something coming. So and back then it was Ethan and I, Ethan Kelly, who was
I saw he commented just a moment ago. Yeah. He is watching.
Is he still up? That's amazing.
He said he was commenting a little earlier. We appreciate you watching.
Well, yeah, but I mean, usually he goes to bed at like 7 p.m. or something.
Maybe he just tuned in briefly.
So Ethan was our beverage director extraordinaire,
right.
and of course he had a love for bourbon, because I was conditioned to love bourbon because my dad was a big bourbon fan. We both said, okay, well, this is it. Let's just give bourbon its letters of glory, and let's help these guys.
Right.
So we built that wall, and we got, I think in the beginning it was just like 100 bourbons, right? And then 2008 came about. 2008 was such a crisis that our customers, a lot of them being in finance and being lawyers and doctors and all of that, and we've always been open to all, because our price points are from here to there.
Right.
Bourbon has always been amazing because it's always been affordable, right?
Yes.
So all of a sudden, the corporate cards would not be able to be used for those 18-year-old Macallan, 3 or 4 rounds of that to celebrate a deal or to just get clients to love you a bit better. So everybody turned to bourbon, and for us, for Ethan and I, bourbon got to that podium thanks to the crisis.
Right.
Because all of a sudden people had to pay for whiskey, but with their own money. And they realized bourbon drinking was making them real patriots, right? And it was just giving you the very same effect as that Macallan 18. And they discovered that realm of beautifully rich and bold whiskey that was bourbon, and rye came just right after that. But really, rye came about more through the door that was kicked open by the bartenders, the mixologists, the bosses.
Yes.
But we definitely now have a thriving bourbon scene thanks to 2008, because of 2008. And in the beginning, the producers were hesitant because they had gone through so many ups and downs in the bourbon drinking history.
Yeah, they really have.
They were quite reluctant to jump up their production levels. And it took them a couple of years to understand that it was a lasting trend. And then, my goodness, I mean, I have never seen an industry react so well, so positively to market demands.
Right.
Because look at Kentucky now. Look at the bourbon production now. It's absolutely brilliant.
It's crazy how much it's
they're offering the best visitor centers ever, the best tools possible. They're grand. They're not hiding anything. They're open. They have really got into their rick houses, and they've picked this and this and that, and they've got from small batches to limited editions to single barrels and
expressions and finishes and something new all the time.
I mean, they've really adapted. It's kudos to everybody in Kentucky, because not only the Tourism Bureau is doing a great job over there, but the city of Louisville, the city of Lexington, the state of Kentucky, they're doing everything they can to make the visitors happy, to make the bourbon fans happy. And that's, first of all, it's amazing that cities and states can actually react so quickly to this, right? But also, it tells you a lot about the general state of mind of Kentuckians, who have always been very generous with their time, their food, and their whiskey. But they're very, very just nice, generous people.
Right.
They welcome you. Kentucky has been welcoming the world. And I mean, for traveling through Kentucky all the time, that you've got more Asian tourists than ever. You've got more European tourists than ever. And well, not right now, but it'll come back. And South America is so interested too. So
and so many other regions of the country, Tennessee Whiskey Trail, Colorado Spirits Trail, so many of these borrowing ideas and being inspired by, rightly so, by what has happened in Kentucky. And I remember, I mean, I spent a lot of time in Louisville, and I still do on and off over the years, how much the growth of bourbon has affected the growth of cuisine, tourism, better hotels. I mean, all these things are very much thanks to bourbon. See, it looks like, actually, Ethan, I think he's still on. He just asked a question here. A story that he wanted to remind you of, that as you were telling your story. So Ethan, thanks for staying up and watching. He said, "Remember when we got schooled for daring to put bourbon in fancy glassware?"
Oh my goodness, he's right.
Who told you not to do that? Did somebody?
I mean, because back then we were using those stemless glasses,
right?
Those wine glasses from Riedel,
right?
And they were fancy glasses,
right?
Very thin crystal glasses, and we were the very first one, right? People were thinking we were crazy, and especially, he's right. The bourbon fans were like, "Well, bourbon. You have bourbon in an old-fashioned glass. You have bourbon in a rock glass. That's how you have bourbon. Bourbon is not for the fancy uptight people. This is not a snob's spirit." And so we were just saying, it's not that we want to make it a snob's drink. It's just that the drink is beautiful. You need to pay attention to it.
Right.
Now, did you just put yourself another.
I actually just poured some scotch, and Ethan just said he just said Booker complained. So I guess back when before Booker passed, he even complained about.
Yeah.
Of course, that's a great. I love hearing these stories. But you all have done so much for Brandy Library and what you all have done for bourbon and for the whiskey culture, and we're obviously looking forward, whenever everything reopens, to going back to Brandy Library, to Copper and Oak. We're thinking of your bartenders and all those bartenders out there that are in uncertain times right now. I poured the Peat Monster from Compass Box, and you poured which one did you pour?
And I poured the Game of Thrones edition of Lagavulin.
Wow.
Just because we can't just keep it in America.
Right.
Let's
a little.
Just give it a nod to Scotland, and to be honest, after bourbon, there are very few Scotch whiskies that can do it.
Right.
Because they're in a different realm.
Yes.
And I'm not saying bourbon or rye is superior. I'm just saying it's a lot bigger. So to me, after bourbon or rye, I can really only have smoky whiskeys.
It's the progression, right? You go to that smoke.
Right. So, and this is a 9-year-old, little bit of an odd age statement, but I think they did a really good job. It's the House Lannister for those. I mean, and look, I discovered those Game of Thrones edition a few months ago. And I had not even watched any episode up until just a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
It's tremendous to see how the spirits industry as a whole, and especially the Scotch industry and the bourbon industry, have managed to get into people's lives in a meaningful way. This is really just one expression of this.
Right.
We can definitely get so much of life enhancement through the right drinks. And that is something that you're always promoting on Bourbonblog. And this is something that we do at Copper and Oak and Brandy Library. Spirits Network has been helping me doing so. It's so enriching when you bring meaning to it.
Yes. When you can tie it into the story just like they've done. And that is a great bottle. I've had one of those. I really do enjoy that. In your experience, in your 15 years or so at Brandy Library, as you're in Copper and Oak, as you're looking at, and this is kind of will lead into, and I'm really looking forward to, I know at some point your all's podcast will be released. You're going to be releasing a podcast. I did a podcast with you guys about a month and a half ago when I was in New York. We talked about the growth of whiskeys, how the prices have gone up, rarity, all these conversations, which were so much fun. But in your experience, the last 15 years or so, what have you been shocked by the most as far as what's become harder to find? One of those things which like, this will never become hard to find, and then it became hard to find even for you. Have you run into any of those?
Well, I mean, there are the usual suspects.
Yep.
The Weller and the Pappy. I mean, the Pappy and the Weller.
Right.
But even Blanton's now is hard to get.
Yes.
Look, we were so happy to introduce people to Elijah Craig, 12-year-old.
Right.
It was the rich, beautiful, big bourbon out there, so well made at a price that was just, maybe we just lived a dream for too many years.
Because it was $25 or so a bottle, right? Or less.
It's amazing. I mean, that's it. I mean,
right.
the Weller Special Reserve, and I don't even want to go back to when it was a 7-year-old, but even just 10 years ago, it was like $22.
Wow.
If that. The 12-year-old, I think, topped at 28 or 30.
Right. It wasn't that. It was really very affordable. Yeah.
So yes, a lot has changed. However, it's all for the better, I believe, especially for bourbon, because bourbon was not pricey enough. Now I know a bourbon barrel, I mean a brand new barrel is not that expensive. It's more expensive now than it was 10 years ago, but it's still, it's not a sherry butt, right?
Right.
Corn, yellow dent number 2 is not that expensive. A continuous distillation that most bourbons are employing leads to a very efficient making of a white dog.
Right.
So making bourbon is not expensive, but there's everything else. There is actually the monitoring of the whiskey during aging. There is all the money that you put in the bottle and the label. And
they tax the barrels every year. There's
the taxation during maturation, and of course there's all the marketing element to it, and there's the sales force and all that. There's so much more than just making it.
Right.
So no matter what, when, say, 10 years ago, that Weller Special Reserve was at $22, and when maybe a Macallan 12 was at $60, $55 a bottle, I think that this Weller Special Reserve should have been already back then at $40.
We were very lucky for a while, weren't we?
We were just way too lucky for too long.
That's true.
That's it. So there is a new normal. You either adapt and don't spend your money in fast food, but you spend it in good bourbon, or you just keep on thinking of the old days, but that makes you bitter.
Right. You better move forward. And as we do move forward, obviously we so appreciate what Spirits Network has done and continues to do for the spirits community, for the whiskey community, and definitely for all those watching. I'll put that link up again, but spiritsnetwork.com. WWVIP will get you that year. It's free membership for the Explore level, and definitely take advantage of that. We appreciate you offering that to our Bourbonblog viewers, Flavien, and it's so fun to have you here with us. We're continuing to stay on top of trends. I know you all are too at Spirits Network. Are there any trends that you think? I mean, obviously bourbon is, it's continuing to grow, but are there any trends, other spirits that you think will become like the next bourbon? Anything at all that you foresee in our spirited future?
So you're asking what you should be buying in bulk.
What should all these great people that should we get? Because we may not be able to get it in a few years, right?
Well, it's the Japanese whiskey trend it's already very hard to get.
Right.
Mezcal is there as well. Armagnac remains the spirit that can show great depth, amazing richness, a lot of history, great culture, and great age too. So I don't think I know Armagnac is next, right? But I almost don't want to say it. Because I don't want people to flock and buy old Armagnacs.
Right.
When you can see that you can buy a Lobad Intemporel number 5 or Darros 30-year-old for just close to nothing, to be honest, given the quality of the product, it's insane. But at the same time, it's beautiful because it means that we don't have to put this world behind us. We can still enjoy those beautiful things. What I really want to see in the very near future is someone to come up with a device that would be embedded in a mask that could allow for proper sipping. Because let's face it, the new reality might be about mask drinking.
We need to work. We should invent one of those. So put a straw somehow creatively in a mask. Wow, that's a great idea.
So why don't we just all wake up and stay sober until 2 p.m. a couple of days in a row? You can think of this. No, responsible drinking is always the best way.
Yeah, but could we see maybe even a mask that would somehow have a straw that would come down? That would be incredible. That'd be
right. Something like I don't know, maybe like a a sucking beak device, and even if it was battery powered, I don't know. Someone must come up with it.
It's going to be important because it's going to be a while before we see those masks go away. And we all know we have to somehow put the straw under or something to.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, I cannot imagine a future with drinking with a straw.
Maybe we just need to put a zipper in it. What do you think a zipper could work? It's been done before. Maybe we can apply it to.
I think you've been watching different sort of programming recently. I told you my French mind goes these
French mind goes some places.
Depth, yes.
It's so great to see you, my friend. It's so nice to have a dram here with you. We did some Whistle Pig, your single barrel. We did some Kings County. We did you had the Harper Blade and Bow. If you are just beginning to watch, definitely go back and watch everything we drank. The Bullet, some smoky. By the way, I love this. You really enjoy your smoky whiskey. This is so beautiful too. Yeah. This blended peated whiskey. But this video will be up permanently on this link. So if you're watching on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, share this, like this, go back and watch it. And definitely, I'm going to put this up one more time. Go to Spirits Network, get one of those memberships, get the app for your phone, and watch this great content that Spirits Networks. Oh, well, that's actually when we do our show, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every night on Bourbonblog live, bourbonblog.com/live. Just bookmark that. That's where we'll always be. And then when you're done with the show, go to spiritsnetwork.com, and that code is WWVIP. Get on Spirits Network. It's their content so much fun, and maybe you'll even see a bottle you want to order, right?
Thank you so much, Tom.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, my friend.
Cheers.
Thank you. This one's